Hello again, this is David West, your plebeian philosopher. Today we're going to be talking about utopias. We're going to be talking about the utopias of the authoritarian right wing, the authoritarian left wing, and the center. And let's start with the authoritarian right wing. So they tend to, they set their utopias in the distant past. It tends to be very deep into the past, typically pre-industrial revolution. They deeply idealize and mythologize their past, and then they use the utopia to justify violence. They try to bring about this past utopia into the present through violence. Their mottos are like "Make the country great again" and whatnot, and they look at like all progress as like examples of moral decay. They tend to reinforce their practices of like rigid hierarchy and ruling class and slave class, stuff like the divine right of kings, that kind of stuff, where you can't really break into these kinds of things. Their class system tends to be based on identity, like race, religion, ethnicity, culture, gender, and sexual norms, and it tends to be very rigid. Very, very rigid, and something that you can't break into. You can't break into through the class system. They also tend to look to messianic figures. They look for messiahs to fix all the problems. So the messianic figure tends to be dear leader, the dictator. It tends to be the dictator as the messianic figure. Some examples of alt-right utopias: the Roman Empire to fascist Italy in the 1930s. They deeply mythologized the Roman Empire. They deeply idealized the Roman Empire, and they violently tried to bring the Roman Empire back to the present. But it wasn't the actual Roman Empire. It was their mythologized version of it that they were using to justify all the violence. And of course, the alt-right movement in Germany in the 1930s with the Aryan race, that was even further in the past, and it never existed. It was a complete mythology, complete myth. But they used that myth to justify genocide and ethnic cleansing on an industrial scale. It was horrifying, the stuff that they used they use this utopian vision to justify so much bloodshed and violence. Okay, let's talk about the alt-left utopias. So where the alt-right puts their utopias in the distant past, the alt-left puts their utopias in the distant future. They mythologize the future, they idealize the future, and an example of that is Karl Marx. In his writing, he talked about a classless society where everyone was equal, and this utopian vision of the future of the alt-left was used to justify horrendous violence as well. And that's really the theme here. Utopias, it's all about the ends justify the means. They're trying to justify all this horrible stuff in the present to bringing about utopia. But the fact is, the future is based on the present. And if your present means are violent, it's not going to give you a good future, and it's not going to restore a good past. One of the interesting reasons why the authoritarian left wing looks to the future is because before the Industrial Revolution, leftism wasn't really a thing. It required the infrastructure of sanitation, water, power, communication. All this intensive infrastructure wasn't really possible before the Industrial Revolution. So leftism recognizes that technological advancement was essential to forming densely populated cities, enough to form political leftism in general. So that's why the political left just sees like the expansion of the city as an expansion of leftism. And it sees technological advancement as also an advancement of leftism, which is why the political left, especially the authoritarian left, looks at political advancement as a good thing, as their utopia, as their method of achieving utopia. And that's another reason, once again, the authoritarian right wing, they look at technological advancement as helping the left, and they want to reverse that. So they're reactionary. They want to go back to the past. Great. Okay. So let's talk about the centrist response. Well, let's mention one other thing about the leftist utopias. Instead of looking to messiahs, they tend to look to revolutionary figures. So their thing is revolutionary figures. The right wing is messianic figures. The right wing's more about religion. The left wing's more about secular. But they both look to these figures that tend to be personified in the dictator of their particular regimes. Okay, so getting back to the center, the political center. I mean, we don't publicly institutionalize utopias. We don't demand it of anyone. Unlike the authoritarian, regardless of what type of authoritarian you are on, they're going to mandate you follow a utopia and you agree and adhere to a utopian vision. But the center doesn't demand that. You're free to believe whatever you want to believe, though, so long as you're not violent about it. So you can be into sci-fi, or you can be into wizards and warriors. You can go all medieval. It's okay. In the center, it's okay to be futurist. It's okay to look to the past, but you just can't use it to justify violence. And as far as wealth inequality, it tries to minimize wealth inequality, but it knows that there's no ethical way to eliminate all wealth inequality. See, leftism believes that there is a way, and the authoritarian leftist, uses violence to try to achieve perfect equality, which it's unethical. So the center tries to reduce inequality as much as it can, wealth inequality, class inequality. It tries to reduce these things because these inequalities do create political instability, and it does harm a republic. But they know that in centrism, there's no way to completely eliminate these things ethically. So there's always going to be some inequality existing. So some examples of reducing inequality in the center is just eliminating abuse. So we could be talking about like Bernie Madoff or Enron. Those companies created a lot of wealth inequality through fraud and theft. If you eliminate the abuses, and you eliminate a lot of the inequality. And then other examples like deregulating to eliminate the oppressive Jim Crow laws. It tries to reduce inequality that's legislated, a legislated oppression. It tries to eliminate those oppressions that have been legislated. So that's how it tries to deal with inequality, rather than look to a messianic figure or a revolutionary figure. And yeah, we're all equal members of the Republic. Everyone's an equal participant. We're all equal partners in the Republic. And the goal isn't to look to some messianic figure or revolutionary figure, but the goal is to encourage everyone to fix the Republic in their own way. So long as you don't use violence, fix the problems you see around you in your own way. Just don't be violent about it. Be respectful. And if you like what you hear, then like and subscribe, and thank you for your time.